Hey guys, it's Dominish again. So I'm going to try this again. This time I'm going to tell you about my second great-granduncle, Jeremiah W. Miller. So I was researching him for 52 Ancestors in 52 Weeks. I was actually researching his children when I decided that I wanted to look a little bit more into his history, and I found some really disturbing facts. Actually, it turns out that he is the other gentleman named Jeremiah in my family that turned out to be a murderer. And his story is it's an absolutely tragic story. I feel so bad for his family. So Jeremiah and his wife lived in Upper Cumberland County in central Pennsylvania, and they were married, and it was not a happy marriage. It was not happy on either end. Jeremiah was very paranoid. He would accuse his wife of infidelity on a regular basis. You know, she was quoted as saying it didn't matter how hard she tried, she just couldn't make him happy. And one day in August of 1890, things really came to a head. So his wife, Mrs. Miller, had gone to the store to buy something. She comes back, and Jeremiah starts accusing her of infidelity again. And at this point, they had 9 children, 9 children between the two of them in this marriage, and they had an infant that she was still nursing at the time. And the newspaper reports say that during this argument, she was nursing their infant child. And Jeremiah, I guess, just snapped that day, and the fight escalated. The children were there seeing all of this happen, and he got a double-barreled shotgun, and he shot his wife in the chest while she's nursing their infant daughter. He had no justification. First of all, murder, there's no justification, but he had no evidence that his wife had ever actually been unfaithful. I have a feeling that a lot of this was due to mental health issues, but he decided to take it into his own hands, and he shot her. And then he starts crying and freaking out because he realized, I shot my wife. And she wasn't dead right away, although it was a mortal wound, but she was still alive after being shot. The newspapers don't say what happened to the baby. I would assume that the baby survived and was unharmed. It just says that she was nursing the child when he shot his wife. So he gathers the children around, and this is not a direct quote, but there is a quote from his 17-year-old daughter. She spoke to the police and the coroner during the inquest, and he basically says, you know, kids, I shot your mother, and now I need to go shoot myself. He said he was going to go blow his head off. So these poor traumatized, there's 9 of them, poor traumatized children just watched their father shoot their mother. So then he goes outside and he shoots himself in the stomach and he kills himself. So this is at approximately 9 a.m. on an August day in 1890. No one shows up to help anyone until 12 p.m. So there you have a dead father. The mother is bleeding out, slowly dying. You have an infant that was being nursed by their mother when all of this happened. And then you have 8 other children. The oldest was 17. And they didn't have anyone to help them. So I honestly can't imagine what happened from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. Those poor children, you know, have to be just absolutely traumatized about what happened to them. So when the coroner comes and the police show up, Mrs. Miller is still alive at this point. She's dying. It's definitely a mortal wound, but she's still alive. And the people involved, they really don't want anything to do with Mr. Miller. Like, they basically say in the newspaper that they just wanted to, like, dump his body. Like, they didn't want to handle it or anything. And Mrs. Miller was still coherent enough, and she's like, no, actually, I have a certificate for Mount Zion Cemetery in Upper Cumberland County. I want you to take him there, and that's where I want him to be buried. So God bless this woman. You know, if I was her, I'd be like, you know, just get rid of him. But she wanted to use her certificate for this plot. So they take his body, you know, they do what they have to do. They ruled it a suicide. Obviously, poor Mrs. Miller ends up succumbing to her wound. They bury Jeremiah Miller in Mount Zion Cemetery. Now, no one would agree to have a religious ceremony for him. None of his family or his friends showed up to the funeral. The only people that were there were the people that opened up the grave, the people that worked at the graveyard, and they said pallbearers, which I'm sure were not friends or family. I'm sure they were just people that happened to be working at the cemetery, and they bury his body. Plot twist, they describe it as a stone's throw away in the newspaper, is a man that was murdered by Jeremiah's father. So not only do you have Jeremiah W. Miller, my second great-grandfather, he has killed his wife, killed himself. He's now buried in Mount Zion Cemetery in 1890. But a stone's throw away is the grave of a man that his father killed. So the newspapers say, you know, this is a hereditary homicide. The entire family must be tinged with insanity, which is a really crazy, creepy thing to think about, that like a father commits murder and then his son commits murder. So Jeremiah's father in 1856 finds out that there's this young, attractive 20-something-year-old guy, lives on a farm, and there's a rumor that he always carries a lot of cash on him. And that rumor turns out not to be true, but Jeremiah's dad, John Miller, goes to the farm, and instead of just trying to rob this guy, he decides, well, I'm going to kill him. And then he robs him. Well, guess what? He wasn't carrying a lot of cash. So he gets thrown in prison in Carlisle. They bury that guy in Mount Zion Cemetery. And then John Miller commits suicide by hanging himself in prison. So you have John Miller kill someone, victims buried in Mount Zion Cemetery, he commits suicide. You have his son. Then we skip from 1856 to 1890. You have his son, Jeremiah Miller, who kills his wife. He's buried in Mount Zion Cemetery after he kills himself. And he's really, really close to where the victim of his father is buried. It's just really weird, 6 degrees of separation. Everyone says, you know, in Pennsylvania, you're related to each other, you know everyone. I mean, it's wild to me that, you know, I get it, it's a small town, but they're all buried in the same cemetery. And the newspapers really ran with this, and they were saying that Jeremiah's brother was a weirdo too. Apparently he was a hermit, and the whole family's insane, and, you know, God bless the kids that had to go through this. So far I haven't found any other murders on the family tree, but that's 2 men named Jeremiah that were murderers on the family tree. My third great-grandfather on my mother's side murdered a horse thief. My second great-granduncle on my dad's side murdered his wife, and then his father, named John, murdered a man, you know, trying to rob him, and then committed suicide. So, you know, here I am. I just want to find out, you know, like maybe I'm related to the Queen of England or something, and instead I just keep digging up all of these crazy murder stories. And I kind of feel like the people in Australia, where it's like fun to research your family and figure out why they got sent to Australia back in the day, because you had to commit a crime to be sent there. It was a prison colony. But yeah, I'm not trying to, you know, find out any more murders in the family line. I have anxiety and depression. I don't want to link my mental health issues back to people like this, but you know, it's part of my family history, and it's worthy of being told. And, you know, God rest Mrs. Miller's soul that she had to endure an abusive marriage like that. And I can only hope that those 9 children went on to live long and fulfilled lives. And hopefully, you know, they learned from the mistakes that their parents made, and they were able to do better for themselves. But yeah, so that's the crazy story of the second Jeremiah in my family that committed murder. So thanks for listening.